What's up, painters, yoki hijos, and daytime soap opera stars? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files Podcast, the podcast that wastes hours of your life that you're never getting back. I am your host, Spencer, joined by Jim from Fantasy for the Ages and our friend Gavin. And today we'll be going back into the Cosmere, our series that we've neglected for a year. We'll be going back into the Cosmere with Yumi and the Nightmare Painter Secret Project number 3, I believe. Yeah, there's going to be lots of Cosmere spoilers. Except for the final 2 books in the Stormlight archive. We were talking backstage, and I have not read Rhythm of War or Wind and Truth, so we're going to stay away from major plot spoilers for that, but there may be little hints and whatnot from those as well, because there's things that I know about the Cosmere from, you know, the later Stormlight books that, you know, I don't know the whole plot, but I know like little things, so those may get sprinkled in here. So all I'm saying is go forward with this episode knowing that, and just be careful. Everything else is getting spoiled. Stuff from Mistborn, Tress, all that stuff is all fair game. So just be careful. Links are in the description. We got, I almost said Twitch. We got Twitter, we got Discord, we got Patreon, we got SpeakPipe, where you can leave us a voice message and we will respond to it on the show. But Patreon is where you can watch these episodes live as we record them for just $3 a month. So go check that out if you'd like to chat with us live while we record this stuff. But other than that, we are going to get right into it. I do have a little asterisk here that I put in my notes. We will continue with Stormlight. We were just talking about this. I needed a little bit of a break after Oathbringer because we were going like boom, 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 just reading them one after another. And then I read Oathbringer twice because the first time I read it, I was like, I just don't get it. And so then I read it again, and it ended up being, it was in my list for most disappointing books of 2024, which I know people are going to crucify me for. But for some reason, it just didn't work for me. However, after reading Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, I've kind of got that like Brandon Sanderson energy back, and I'm like, I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready for Rhythm of War. So so yeah, I'll need a recap. If anybody knows a good recap for Oathbringer, let me know. And then I'll go on to Rhythm of War. Do you guys want to do Rhythm of War soonish?
Whenever. Happy to talk about Rhythm of War. That's
okay.
A good book.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Anytime.
Sweet. So yeah, I read Yumi, and I started it, and something about it, you know, we'll go into general thoughts, but something about it, I just couldn't stop reading it. And then after, like I said, I had like this kind of energy to keep going with Sanderson, and I started Isles of the Emberdark. And I am not enjoying this book at all.
That's funny. I loved Isles of the Emberdark way more than Yumi. That's funny.
Really?
I did not bother with Isles of the Emberdark because
nope,
I just didn't care.
Why is that? Was there something about it that didn't that didn't sit with you, or?
Well, it came out after Wind and Truth, and that's it.
And you were just like, I'm
done. I'm done for now. Maybe I'll come back later, but I've got better things to spend my time on.
Yeah.
So I've heard good things about Isles of Emberdark, but I'm not interested at the moment.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea if I'm in the minority on that or what, but yeah, I'm just like I'm a good like few hours into it. And it's interesting because it takes place like way later in the Cosmere, which is interesting to see. But I'm like hours into it. I'm just like, I could not care less. Especially after Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. It was like, okay. But we are here to talk about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. What are your guys' general thoughts on this book? We'll start with Jim.
Well, as I was reading Yumi, I'll admit, thinking, what the heck am I reading?
Huh.
It was a little confusing at first. It wasn't. It's
Like you weren't sure where it fit?
how does this fit into the
Mhm.
things I've read before? Because I'd read everything in the
Mhm.
Cosmere that was published up to that point
Mhm.
when I read Yumi. I'm like, this is very different, and I'm just not seeing the connections. I mean, I
Mm.
got into the story eventually, but the tone was different, the style was very different, and especially initially had to make myself keep reading.
Hmm.
Now I got to a point where I was interested and finished the story without any difficulty, and I kind of liked what it did at the end,
Mm.
but it was not immediately sucking me in. That was my personal experience. What about
Was
you,
there
Gavin? Oh, go ahead.
was there a point where you were like kind of hooked? Like was there a moment where you were like, "Here we go," and kind of let the story
No, it was more gradual. Okay, I'm getting
Hmm.
more pieces here. All right, I'm continued been interested. There was not one key spot where I can say, "Oh, now I got to keep going." Nah.
Okay. Huh. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't love Yumi the Nightmare Painter. Started getting into it. I didn't really love Painter. I like the Yumi storyline more. Honestly, the
Oh.
thing, well, I don't really DNF books, but the thing that kept me going is trying to figure out, like, how does this fit into the wider Cosmere, trying to, like,
Mm.
pick up the little Easter eggs. I'm liking Brandon's new books where like, Hoyd's the storyteller and figuring
Yeah.
out why Hoyd's there. And, like, so it's kind of the high level Cosmere stuff. So the low level story part wasn't really getting me. Also, I felt it very different too. Like I'm a big time fantasy reader, but I'm not a romantasy reader. This might be the first like book that would fall under romantasy that I might have even ever read.
Mm.
So the whole like I'm not a big romantic relationship in books guy as it like in any case. So that like it was fine for me, but it wasn't really bringing me in. But honestly, by the end, and it wasn't a moment. It was a slow build towards the Sanderlanche at the end. That I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I'm here for this. I like the reveal. I like the red herring of like, oh, they're trying to start space travel, and like I like how we set all that up in terms of like the world kind of being very interesting. And then honestly, what really stuck with me is I got at the near the end with the relationship stuff between Yumi and Painter. I got a tiny, tiny, tiny bit misty eyed at the very, very end, which is the first time
Mhm.
Brandon has ever got that to me. So that's huge kudos in his favor because I was not expecting that. And it wasn't, it wasn't anything crazy, but he got me a little bit with the ending. So for that and some of the cool Cosmere stuff. Overall, I would say I enjoyed it, but it would still probably be my second to least favorite of the secret novels. Although, actually,
Interesting.
maybe I liked it more than Tress. I'm not sure. Actually, what? Maybe it's above Tress, but below Sunlit Man. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd put it at the bottom of the three. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Yeah, for me, I mean, I I really don't know where it falls for me with the other ones because I like Tress a lot. Um, it'd definitely be above Frugal Wizard's Guide. Um,
I love
but
that book.
even though,
For
yeah,
sure.
we were just talking about that. Yeah, I liked that book a lot too. Um, but I think it would be above Frugal Wizard's Guide, and then it might be kind of a tie with Tress. Like I really really liked both of those for different reasons.
Hmm.
And I'm out of the three of us for sure. I am like the romance guy. I don't really read romantasy, but I love romance in fantasy books. And one of my favorite movies, I'm not like a I'm not a big anime fan. Like I don't watch a ton of anime. I've seen some of the big ones like Death Note and stuff. But one of my favorite just movies bar none doesn't matter, anime, regular movie, whatever, is called Your Name. and it's there's like a very I wish I could remember his name, but there's a guy who made this movie, and he's kind of talked about um in the same context as who's the guy that did like Spirited Away, Studio Ghibli. This guy is kind of talked about in the same way as Studio Ghibli. And Your Name is an amazing movie. It kind of combines, I mean, I think for anybody that is a fan of this book, Brandon Sanderson said straight up in the acknowledgments and everything that Your Name was a major inspiration for this book.
Okay.
And this book allowed the same like kind of character arcs and, you know, like time crossed lovers, world crossed lovers, like that kind of thing, is very prevalent in Your Name, as well as this book. And so as soon as I saw the cover for this book, I was like, that looks like Your Name. Like it, I can see the inspiration right away. And then when I read the description, I was like, this is like fantasy Your Name, you know, but in a book form. And then as soon as I started it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, this is perfectly, you know, there's clear inspiration from this movie. And so I pretty much fell in love with it right away. I like the first scene we get with Painter where he's running through the alleyway or whatever, and he comes across a nightmare and paints his thing. And I just loved figuring out how all that worked. And you guys mentioned you weren't really sure where it fit within the Cosmere when you had started reading it. And I guess I don't know if I really thought about it that much. I don't think I recognized that it was Hoyd telling the story, but I don't think I thought too much about like where or when it was taking place. But in that first chapter with Painter, he mentions like basically electricity. They called it Heon lines and stuff, but it's essentially electricity with like a modern society and stuff. So I'm like, this must take place like way in the future of the Cosmere. And I found that really interesting too, because so far, Tress takes place way in the future. Yumi takes place way in the future. And then
I don't think that's actually true, Spencer. I don't think Yumi's way in the future. It's Heon lines, not electricity, and there's even worlds in the Cosmere that have electricity earlier than others. So I don't I think Sunlit Man's way after this. Ember's Island, the Emberdark way after this. Tress is way after this. I don't actually think this one is that far. I think it's pretty ambiguous. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's not one of the far future ones. Because it's not even electricity. It's just, you know, it's magic.
Yeah, I was listening to a couple podcasts in preparation for this, and there's something that Hoyd says. I forget what it is. I'm not like super clued into all this, but there's something that Hoyd says that definitively puts it ahead of Tress.
Interesting. I forgot that.
I forget what it is, but Hoyd mentioned something happening that would put it in front or later than Tress. But it could be around the same exact time. Again, I don't know really how all that fits together, but
I think they're pretty purposely ambiguous, to be honest. I don't think it really matters timeline wise.
Yeah. But I mean, they have a spaceship that takes them up to like another planet and everything. So that's got to be, you know, unless planets can, you know, advance technologically at vastly different rates, or I mean, I'm sure they do.
Keep in mind, Naz shows up on Scadrial in Mistborn Secret Project. Can I do Mistborn Secret Project spoilers?
Yeah, you can do that.
So Mistborn Secret Project is like at the time of the first Mistborn trilogy, and he rocks up holding a gun. So it's other planets, you know, evolve technologically at different rates, and they don't always, you know, it doesn't always spread.
Okay, who shows up with a gun?
Naz, which is he shows like he's like one of the behind the scenes 17 shard guy. Oh, I can't remember.
World
Do you remember
Hopper?
who he works with? Yeah, he's a World Hopper guy. Like he's the one. He's on Roshar. He's the one who fishes
Oh,
Shallan's
yeah,
trunk out of the lake when the ship spears. He's the one who's like doing the paintings
right,
of like Bridge 4 and whatever. And Rock scares him away at one point. He's a side World Hopper guy doing his own things. He works
right.
for Chris, who shows up in Mistborn. Like Chris dances with Wax in the second era of Mistborn. So yeah, the behind the scenes World Hopper folks.
Okay.
So my point being is like I know during like the era of Mistborn, during the era of Stormlight, there are other planets with full on electricity and computers and guns and stuff that just doesn't transfer over.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that. But yeah, anyway, I guess just kind of ongoing with general thoughts here. I loved that Hoyd narrated it. And Jim, you mentioned earlier, or yeah, was it you that mentioned you like when Hoyd narrates things, or was that Gavin? Which one of you said that?
I liked it for sure, and I'm excited that the next Cosmere book is a Hoyd narrated one too. Looking forward to that next year.
Hoyd is far and above the best character of Cosmere. We just enjoy him in all his various iterations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was surprised as I was kind of listening to reviews and stuff this morning. There's some people that were like, this book didn't need to be narrated by Hoyd. And I'm like, he makes it so much better. Like everything,
I agree.
I wish they were all narrated by Hoyd. Like I think it's excellent. And he wasn't like super obtrusive in this book.
Doesn't get much less obtrusive than a coat rack.
Yeah, he's a coat rack. Yeah. And that was just so funny. I was like, no way. And I don't know, some people, I think Sanderson's humor either clicks with you or it doesn't. And I think Hoyd being a coat rack is absolutely hilarious. I thought it was so good. But yeah, I liked when, especially for someone like me that is, even though I've read a number of the Cosmere books, I'm still kind of like figuring it all out and putting all the pieces together and stuff. And for Hoyd to come in every now and then and be like, here's how this connects to everything, and just kind of do his own little monologue for a moment. I really like that. I thought that was super, super helpful. Yeah, it was a little info dumpy, but at the same time, it's like being narrated by Hoyd. Like there's a storyteller element to it rather than just like a random info dump in the middle of a conversation. So I appreciated it quite a bit, I guess. Outside of the like romantic part of the book, what did you guys think about the relationship between Yumi and Painter? Just kind of like this working relationship where they're like stuck together and kind of going back and forth and all this. We'll start with Jim.
Well, I enjoyed the progression. When it first starts, it's very jarring for both of them. Neither appreciates the other's perspective and the situation they're in, and the slowly coming to understand each other and their cultures and how to work as is necessary in the situation. I thought that development was done very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And and then they come to very much appreciate each other as we get late into the story. So yeah, I liked that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
No, and I would echo Jim there 100%. I like that. I thought it's a fun idea. And I'll tell you what, as someone who was forced to watch Freaky Friday 2 over the Christmas break with my family, I much prefer the Yumi Painter body switch.
Oh my god,
Freaky Friday
great.
2. That's for darn sure.
Dude, I cannot watch the freak. Oh god, there was somebody that did a review on that recently, and it was so funny. I'm like, there's no way that the movie is this bad.
It is.
Yeah, jeez, what a mess.
And I remember watching the first one as a kid, like because my sister
Yeah,
loved it, like,
And
and
that
it was
was
a good
good. The
movie.
first one,
The first one was great.
yeah.
it's fun.
Second one was tough.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Yeah, I liked the even though they didn't like necessarily get along immediately, I liked that there was always kind of a mutual respect for each other and for like each other's world, and like when I'm in your world, I'm going to behave somewhat appropriately, even though there was some like boundaries being pushed with um like when Painter first gets there, and Leon was like shocked that he was like, I'm gonna eat by myself and all this stuff. um but one of the things I pointed to, I think in my notes, or maybe I didn't mention it there, was there's a common trope in anime, and this book felt very anime. I want to hand it to Sanderson for making this really feel like an anime, which I thought was kind of cool. But there's a common trope in anime where there's like the hot springs or the bathhouse or something, and all the characters are like super pervy and oh my god, boobs, and it's like very like cringy. And I liked that he was able to do this scene with these two characters and make them both like so like mutually respectful of each other, and like and also the characters were so kind of innocent in a way that it wasn't like this weird like cringy scene. I just thought it was interesting that he was able to pull that off. But yeah, I like the relationship that kind of grows between them even outside of the romance, where little by little they come to understand each other and understand like what makes the other person tick. And I loved like when she's in his world and he's like, yeah, check out these TV shows, and she just starts like watching the TV shows, and he's happy just to like sit there and like let her like dive into all these like basically soap operas, like daytime soap operas.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, she's never experienced anything like this before. And then her going, I forget who his other friend is, uh Asane or Akane or something like that. But she takes Yumi clothes shopping, and I feel like this, it could have been like the typical, oh, like the farm girl gets a makeover kind of thing. But what was so interesting about it is that in her life, everything that she's doing in Painter's world, she was so strictly held to like a code of, you can't have any fun, like everything is duty, everything is like you wear this ceremonial garb because you're not a person, of course, you're a duty bound thing, like you are something that is connected to the spirits, and like you don't have a life, you are this thing. And so then for her to get this scene where she just gets to like indulge and just be a person, that was a really cool part of her character arc. And then with Painter, on the other hand, he's got this like secret. Like, what did you guys think about the secret around his friends and the reveal on that? Like they were all upset with him. You guys remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They were all like upset with him, and Yumi didn't know why, the reader didn't know why, and then you find out that he had told them that they could join him in the dream, whatever like the higher tier of painters are. And so they're all excited to do this, and then he like just abandons them, and they're like, where did Painter go? And then they find out that he's just hanging out by himself, and he didn't want to tell them that he had been like excluded from this club and all this stuff. overall, I feel like that was like kind of a lackluster reveal. I was kind of like, oh, that's why they're upset with him. Um, but what I did like was the way that Yumi reacts to it, because this whole time she's been calling him a liar, and like she initially thinks that he's like this hero and all this stuff. And then she finds out that he's just like a guy. He's just kind of a shitty guy. and um, and then she finds out from his friends that he's also like a liar, what they think is a liar. Um, and so then she goes back to him and he kind of explains it all, and he's like, you should just like go away. Like, I don't deserve to be friends with anybody. I'm such a terrible person, all this stuff. And I thought while reading it that she was going to be like, you are a liar. Like, you're such a crappy person, all this stuff. But instead she comforts him, and they go to the carnival together, which I think is probably the best scene. I like that scene the most out of everything in the book, because it also shows growth on Yumi's part, where she's starting to understand Painter better and have more compassion for him and be less strict, and whatever you want to call it. She's starting to grow as a person, and then she invites him to also grow as a person and forgive himself for this thing that had happened.
Yeah, I mean, they both struggle very much to be able to see things from the other person's perspective.
Hmm.
With Yumi coming from such a rigid society where the expectations are hard formed, there's no breaking out of that, and it's very easy for her to judge Painter. To not be able to wrap her mind around how he could possibly be like this,
Right.
and vice versa. He can't get how she can be so judgy. How
Mhm.
these things, because they're just not wired that way, either one of them. And so that's that growth we see over the course of the story. And what you're describing, Spencer, is how it plays out so beautifully, to be
Yeah.
able to see finally, ding, light bulbs going off and understanding
Mhm.
actually existing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree. And to add to that, I like how it's not, in terms of the struggling to understand, it's not because, because you hate it when the characters are like acting obtuse and they're like, come on, like, you don't buy it, but it all works because of like the way how the worlds are so vastly different. And that's the benefit of fantasy, is like, it's not, the characters' obtuseness that makes it difficult. It's the such vastly different circumstances that they come from, where it all makes perfect sense. Why it would be a bit of a struggle and take some time. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
all very well done.
Yeah, I liked the interplay with them as far as their different backgrounds. Like you said, they come from such significantly different societies and expectations for them on a daily basis. Like, Painter's boss is kind of like, he dislikes him, but he also gives him a lot of slack. And Painter is just kind of grown up in this. I mean, he's essentially from a different time period, so he's just kind of grown up in like an easier time period where expectations are not as high. And she's like thousands or hundreds of years old, I forget which. And not only is she from a different time period, but she is like one of the most important people, these people that talk to the spirits and have them, help her people and stuff. And so much is put on her. And I love an opposites attract story. I do. I think it usually works out pretty well. um but yeah, people, as I was listening to reviews, I feel like people are split. um about half the reviewers were upset about the ending, saying that they wanted Sanderson to stick with the tragic ending, and then other people were like, no, I liked how it ended. Do you guys fall one way or the other on the ending?
I was good with the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, this book got better and better for me as I went in through it.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I was perfectly at peace and satisfied and good with the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I remember thinking near the end, thinking, "Oh wow, Sanderson's kind of making this more of a tragedy than I was kind of expecting, with kind of the lightness of this story." So when he kind of pulled it back a little bit, and made it much more of a happy ending, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. Especially because this is not a world that I expect us to really be going back to in the Cosmere, and it's kind of a one-off that
Right.
I'm quite
Yeah.
happy with how it ended.
Yeah, I think people were pointing to, because she watched that drama, that soap opera, where the one guy, these two people had been in a relationship, and the one guy was like, I'm leaving and never coming back, and she had this whole thing like, it can't end that way, and Painter was like, well, sometimes that's just how stories end, like they don't always have a happy ending. um and people kind of took that as like foreshadowing for how this book was going to end, and they kind of assumed a lot. And I feel like a lot of people missed the scene where she was like talking with Painter's friends later, and the one girl was like, oh yeah, they came back with a secret episode, and that was actually his evil twin brother, and the real guy came back, and they lived happily ever after. um and I feel like people, like, if you want to use that as like foreshadowing for the end, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't take like half of it and then ignore like what ended up happening later with the same, piece of
Hmm.
information. um but there's that. And then also
So
just
just
the
to that
fact.
point, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say to that point, I did like, because Sanderson doesn't really do it, I find, in terms of like, I've really noticed looking back the red herrings in this book, that being one of them, and the other one being like this space exploration. And I thought that it was subtle, but not too subtle. And I enjoyed how he threw those red herrings in there to keep you guessing on some of that stuff for sure.
You're talking about the initial assumption that she was from another planet.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Because like I'm a world building guy too, so I'm trying to figure out how the magics works, how they interact, where this is, are these two different planets? Like trying to figure that out the whole time because I can't stop myself. And so just the offhand mentions to, oh, we're gonna be setting a rocket up or whatever, but it's like we look it through the telescope and like there's no blackness, or there's not stuff floating there. And although the
Right.
magic did kind of break my brain in this book, and I don't like to think about that one too much, but I did like the red herrings to keep us guessing on some of the plot stuff and the world stuff for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I was fully under the assumption that she was from a completely different planet basically the entire time. Like, I did not see the twist coming that she was
Hmm.
from the same planet, like, at all. Um but yeah, we can talk more about that, but real quick, I'll mention the other reason why I think the ending works the way it does is because if Yumi had died at the end, then she would not have a full character arc, because this whole time she's like, no, I'm duty bound. Like, this is my duty. I need to do this. And Painter is trying to teach her that you don't have to be that way. You can lay down your duty, and you can be a normal person, and you can just enjoy life and have the freedom to choose. And the way she died at the end of the book was in service to that duty. So if she had, then there wouldn't be like a really nice, neat, full character arc. It would kind of just be her, doing the same thing she had done the entire book. Um, and so I think with the way that it ended, it was her choosing something for herself. It was her, making a choice to stay and be with Painter instead of fulfill this greater duty. Um, and I just think,
I think that's a great point. Yeah.
I think if it had been the other way, then it just wouldn't work as a character arc. And then of course people would be complaining about like, oh well, Sanderson took the girl character and he made her like relegated to this thing she has no choice in, and people would be looking at that under a microscope. And so it's like, I don't know. I liked how it ended. Like maybe I'd be satisfied with the tragic ending, but I much prefer the romantic gesture of him pulling her out of the ether and bringing her back and whatnot. Although, and maybe you guys can answer this, with him pulling her back out of the whatever, out of the ether, he used investiture to bring back people are wondering if he just brought back his idea of her or if he actually brought her back, because he hasn't known her very long, and so in order to bring her back, he's like painting, everything he knows about her, all the ways in which he sees her. So do you guys think that he brought her back, or do you think that he just brought back a version of her that he knew, if that makes sense?
So I'm not as big. I'm a pretty big Cosmere and robotics nerd, but not nearly as big as some. So it's been a while since I looked into it. My assumption has been that he really brought her back, and it was only possible because of how highly invested Yumi was, and so that allowed him to pull her back from. I can't actually remember that scene very well, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, I think
Sure.
it worked because of how highly, apparently according to Brandon, I remember reading on one of his AMAs or something, like Yumi is one of the most powerful, like most invested people we've seen in the Cosmere, other than like the shards themselves, of course, and some others, Hoyd, obviously. But she is just super invested, and I think that's what made what Painter did possible, is my guess, at least. I'm not 100% sure.
I understood it just a little different. I mean, obviously the massive investiture comes into play for sure, but I didn't see her as now, being alive in the normal sense. She's like a shadow of what she was due to the investiture, and he's able to bring that back to life. In that sense, her world had been paused for centuries, and now, ta-da, I can do this with you. And he doesn't have to fully explain it. It's novel.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
his
that
hard
deep.
magic.
Yeah.
He always has an explanation, but he doesn't have to every time. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly happy with not having like a full explanation for it. I just thought it was just kind of something interesting to think about. And what's her name? The Spren, the
Design.
design. Yeah, she mentioned like, holy crap, you have a lot of investiture. What do we know where that? Like, I'm not really sure how things get invested. So do you know? Do you guys know why Yumi has so much investiture?
I don't know
I
if I
think it was
did. I
because it
don't
was
remember.
spread out between all the Yukahijos, and then she was like the last one, so it all just eventually over the years got concentrated into her, I think, is what I remember.
Huh.
But yeah, like honestly, the magic system on that world and what type of investiture it is and how that world is so invested is still a pretty big question mark to me, honestly.
Yeah, how'd they explain the just kidding, she's not my sister? That must have been an awkward couple months, I imagine. And yeah, I loved the other characters. I really loved the side characters in this book. Whether it be, I forget his real name, but the painter's friends that just kind of accept Yumi, and they're like, come join us, like Painter sucks, like just come hang out with us. I really liked them, and just kind of that whole group. And Sanderson found a way to make all of them like quite a bit deeper than what they appear on the surface. Like even the big like muscle guy, like they, they were all, they had a deeper element to them than just being relegated to side characters who are kind of surface level. And so I enjoyed
Tell
a
you what, I
lot of
did
that.
not pick up on one of them being a Dysgenamian. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, can you explain what that is?
So you have you read? Oh, what's the Lift short story or novella?
Edge Dancer.
Oh
or
yeah,
the
I've read
Edge
Edge Dancer.
and then also Dawn Shard
Mm-hmm.
is when we've ran most into Dysgenamians or Sleepless. So they're the
Okay.
ones that they can create bodies that are the hive mind of little little wherever it depends on what planet they're on. In some worlds, they're spiders. In Roshar, the Stormlight world, they're little bugs, and they're a hive mind that can create facsimiles. I think that's the right word, of bodies. And so it always talked about her like covering her skin or having crazy tattoos, and I did not pick up whatsoever, even though I'm looking out for that sort of stuff. That she was one of those sleepless.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
So I thought that was cool, especially that it surprised me and he was able to get that by me, even though I'm into that sort of stuff.
What did you guys think about Hoyd and design in this book? Well, specifically design, because she's doing most of the like actual interactions. But did you guys notice anything cool with her in this book that you didn't get in other books or anything?
It's definitely the most we've seen of her personality, for sure. I don't think you would have, because I think all you would have seen, Spencer, is
I saw him
exactly, yeah. You saw
get
her
design, yeah.
Get design, because when Elokar died, which design was going to be Bonnie too, Hoyd came in and scooped her up. And so obviously over the next two, Rhythm of War and Win and Truth, you'll see a bit more of her. But no, this is definitely the most we've seen of her. Thought she was fun, a bit over the top, goofy, but I think it was a nice she's a nice compliment to Hoyd.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy.
I liked the way that she, even though we didn't get to like see them directly interact, she's a nice kind of foil to Hoyd, where she just like doesn't really care about anything. She's like,
yeah. Well, and also similar to Hoyd, I'm a sucker for the character who will just drop the crazy stuff that is in reality just makes perfect sense, just lore dumps, but to all the locals have no idea what they're talking about.
Oh yeah.
So similar to Hoyd, I'm a sucker for that, so I enjoyed that part of it for sure.
Yeah, that was super fun. And it makes me wonder, does Elantris take place after Oathbringer?
Elantris is early. Elantris is before. The sequel might be after, but the sequel isn't written yet. No, Elantris is early on in the timeline, as I recall.
I believe the same.
Okay, so what's the thing that Hoyd has in Elantris that he's talking to at the end? Doesn't he have like a ball of light or
Xeon, which is like the Elantris version of a Spren, pretty much.
Okay, but that's not design.
No, that's Elantris-based magic for sure.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like, I was thinking about it, I'm like, was that design, but because she's on that planet, she's made to look like one of those things, or
no, that's one of his many magic tech, although I guess that's not really tech because it's a consciousness, I guess, but yeah.
Sure. I wonder if he takes it with him to other planets.
I'm sure he does. Well, yeah, keep reading Stormlight, but yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think that's a good assumption.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, and that is romance.
I believe you meant to say Spencer's favorite topic.
Yeah. I was thinking about it, and I've in the past, I have just kind of agreed with everyone else where I'm like, oh yeah, Sanderson doesn't write romance very well. And because that's kind of like the general consensus from most reviewers I see is like, Sanderson's romance is kind of whatever. But I was thinking about it today, and I'm not sure there's been any book where I specifically did not like the way he wrote romance. Like, I think it works really well in Era 2 of Mistborn with Wax and whatever her name is, and kind of how that grows. And then Mistborn Era 1, a lot of people don't like the Vin and Elend romance. I thought it was great.
Didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. And like even Tress and the Emerald Sea, like even though we didn't get to see a ton of interaction between the two, I liked the romantic ideas in that. And then of course Adolin and
Shalon.
What's her name? Shalon. Yes. That I liked that a lot. And so I really don't think that there's been a specific romance in his books that I haven't really liked. So I'm probably going to walk back like kind of what I've agreed with blindly. in the past. And I think, I mean, it's not like it's never like a crazy whirlwind romance or anything, but I feel like he does it in like a really chill way, I think. And maybe that's why some people don't like the romance, is because it's not like this like super like in-depth, super invested romance. Like what do you guys think? Do you guys know why people generally like don't tend to like his romance?
I'll pick up because I just it adds right to your point. Is I agree with you, but I think that's why I like. So I'm not someone who really cares that all that much about romance and books. It's not what I read these stories for. However, so but you got to have romance, or you don't have to. But I'm fine with it. And so that why people don't like Brandon's romance is, I think, actually why I like it, because it doesn't take the center stage generally. It doesn't, like, for me, for the romance storyline, if it doesn't bug me, then I'm happy with it. And for me, none of those relationships, like Wax and Steris, even Ciri and the God King, for me, it all is important to the story for the most part. It's it's very rarely just like super annoying. It feels like it makes sense for the world, for the story. And so for me, I'm generally very happy with it, because it's not annoying. So, and I think this is a good example of that. I think this one was even more important to the plot, so it gets more screen time, as it were. And it's I think he writes it pretty well. I don't think he's a master romance writer, and I think that's what people who are looking for it, who have read a lot of romance, and they like more, whatever, but I like less. And so I think Brandon gives you less to give you more. And, I'm happy with that for the most part. Almost entirely, really.
I would second Gavin's thoughts on that. The romance, it's about relationships. It's not about smut.
Right.
It's not about getting into all the details. That's not what he's here to write. But relationships are important in any good story. And sometimes they blossom into something a little more. So he's got that in there, but it's never center stage.
Right.
It's just another extension of a relationship. So I agree. I don't have the problem people have with the Sandersons romance, because I don't need it to be such a big thing. That's why I don't read romantasy.
Yeah.
Now, exactly. The more important question about Brandon Sanderson's romance is, people are asking why Spencer can only remember the guys' names in these relationships.
Because they're the main character.
Because you're male centric on your character.
I know, I'm so misogynistic.
Steris is a fantastic character in this era too.
I love Steris.
I agree.
Development, her just that's great. One of the best parts of the era.
When I started reading Era 2, I was like, I hate this character so much. I hated Steris. And then it was I think it's Bands of Mourning. And in that book I was like, oh my god, how did he make me flip a complete 180 on Steris? I love this character so much. And yeah, that was my biggest surprise of Bands of Mourning, and it was my biggest surprise of Era 2 in general. It's just that suddenly I cared about Steris. Like, what a great character.
Yep. And that was some good writing.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
How you can get someone to feel so hard one way and be able to swing all the way to the other.
Yeah, I mean, that it says something, right? It's for somebody to have like real like far end of the spectrum feelings about a certain character, and then be able to flip that. That's really doing something with your writing, for sure.
Yeah.
I wrote down, we need more fantasy stories where the world isn't immediately ending, giving the characters more time to do normal stuff. Not just romance, but that too. I always go back to King's Dark Tidings 2 is one of my favorite books of all time, because, the main like world ending plot hasn't begun yet. And so all the characters are kind of just hanging out. They're at taverns, having meals together. They're, taking a stroll in the woods and all this stuff. And it's just very like, it gives them time to just be normal and develop these relationships and friendships or whatever. And that's what I liked about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter too. Like when they go to the carnival, like, yeah, there's some stuff going on in the background that are kind of like these big things that we're trying to figure out, but it's not like, you know, the comet isn't headed towards Earth yet. Like we're, you know, we have time to hang out, and it doesn't feel like we're stopping the story to develop this romance. It feels very well integrated. And I think I think more fantasy stories need to, you know, slow down to allow the characters to, you know, whatever you're going to do with them, whether they're going to be friends or be romantic or whatever. It'd be nice if we got more stories that kind of slowed down enough to where the world isn't immediately ending.
If more people felt that way, I think we'd see more stories like that. But I'm not sure that's what most people look for. It is one of the criticisms I think Yumi gets, is the story's a little slow in
Yeah,
its pacing. People want more to happen and want the stakes to get a little higher faster. Just the general trend. I'm not saying
sure.
that's better writing or better storytelling. I think that's just in general where people are these days.
Yeah, but then people complain that they're like, well, in the middle of this fast-paced story, I had the girl confessing her love to the guy or whatever, and it's like, well, yeah, that's because we're in like a fast. It's gotta if it's gonna happen, it's gotta happen somewhere in the story. It's like, yeah, it's gonna interrupt some stuff. But I think that, tell me if you guys agree with this. I think that a book can be fast-paced without being high stakes all the time. Like I feel like a book can move. Like I go back to King's Dark Tidings 2. That book never feels slow. It never feels slow. But it's not like high tension go 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 go. It's very chill, but
Okay.
I don't know. Do you guys have a thought on that or an example or anything?
Well, I was going to say early Dresden Files, but it's not as big high stakes as it is near the close as the series progresses. But it's still pretty high tension at all times. So I'm not really sure that's a great example.
Mm.
Or like early Lord of the Rings, like some people hate, you know, all the stuff in the Shire. I love that. I don't need to jump right to the we're going to save the world. I love
Mm.
the slow burn and the world building and developing the characters. So I think it's a mix, and I think it's a real personal thing. And I think Brandon pushing himself to do the ultra high stakes. Yeah, it's interesting because I don't really associated high stakes with pace, but perhaps it is a bit more related than I think. So yeah, I don't really have much of a cogent thought on that, but it's an interesting idea.
All right, we'll wrap up here with Cosmere Connections. I'm trying to do this banner thing now so that I can make my chapter markers easier, so I don't have to work as hard. Um, but yeah, what did you guys pick out from this book? Because I have a couple things like virtuosity. Um, that's a new shard, right? That's not something we've heard before now.
New shard, you're right. I forgot about that.
Do we know
And
anything about it? Or
that's the shard who invested this planet, right? That's it's
yeah,
been a while. Yeah, so virtuosity, and I think that might have been the last or second to last named shard of the 16. So yeah, no, that was revealed in this one, and I'd actually forgotten the name of it.
so no other greater implications with that or anything.
Not that I know
Just
of.
new name.
Yeah, no, nothing that I know. I think this is pretty much all we know. The only reference and all we know is this world. I think.
Design says at one point that she doesn't make a very good sword. And so I'm wondering, do we see her being Hoyd's sword in the later Stormlight books? I don't know. Um,
Could be.
No comment.
uh, and then we talked about like late stage Cosmere and stuff. What how Stormlight magic is used on this planet? Was Design using Stormlight magic at some point? Or was Hoyd, or was it referenced or anything? Because I was wondering, can all of this magic be used on different planets? Like, can the people from Mistborn go to Roshar and push and pull tin, or steel and iron and all that?
Well, you're just talking about investiture.
Yeah.
In
I
its
would say
very
the biggest
being,
Stormlight magic we see, I think it depends on the world. Some magic systems are easier to use on other worlds than others. For instance,
Huh.
Hemalurgy is like you get the right spikes, that works wherever you are. Steals whatever magic system that's there are examples where it's much harder. And so I would say that most Stormlight magic we see in Yumi is design herself. Although well, I guess because you're on Rhythm on Board, it's tough. But yeah, you should be wondering about like how did design get off Roshar? Because
Right.
it's not really a storyline at that point. But yeah, no, it's tough to talk around Stormlight magic going off world without with the true spoilers. But
because isn't she's making a body for herself, right? Like, I would assume out of Stormlight. Or is she doing something
so I think
on
she has
Yumi's...
a physical body. I think she might be. I think Hoyd might have hijacked her into another magical system to get. Actually, no, that's still kind of a big mystery to me, to be honest. I don't think it's because if it was a Stormlight body, I would be more like I would think of that closer to like Vale's illusions of Stormlight, and I don't think her body is. I don't think her body's made of Stormlight, but it's still kind of a big question to me. How that's all working. There's some big happenings at the end of Wind and Truth that make. That shake things up a bit in terms of how the magic works and whatnot. So we're still kind of yet to see. This may be a result of that, but we're still kind of yet to see how that plays out.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. So yeah, any other things with
Well, actually, I'll give you one little hint.
Yeah,
I can promise you her body isn't made of Stormlight. I'll say that.
Oh, okay. Huh.
And Tim knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, that I won't say any more than that, but I promise you it's not Stormlight.
Interesting. Okay. That's cool. So what makes it harder for some, like, a Mistborn person to use their magic on another, like, what gets in the way?
So Mistborn's a good, well, because Mistborn, for instance, there's three different Mistborn magics. Hemalurgy is just like you have the right spike them in the right place, you can steal any magic. But for instance, like if someone who's like Mistborn, the people who can do allomancy and ferrocummy, like that's a DNA thing. Like you have to be from that planet to be able to burn those metals. If you're some Stormlight dude, you rock up to Scadrial and start downing metals. Like you can't, without getting spiked, you can't just acquire that magic system. That's something that that's Ruin and Preservation who invested the planet. Like they invested the people. Like you need to be from there. And then there's just other magic systems are more geolocked than others. Like the best example of geolocked is Elantris. So the whole thing is like, but people are trying to figure out how to use different magic systems in different places and trying to combine them and do all sorts of funky stuff. So that's kind of the behind the scenes Cosmere stuff that, the 17th Shard are working on, the Ghost Bloods are working on. How can you move investiture from one planet to another, and how do you use it? So there's not really hard and fast answers. Some of the big Cosmere Realmatics nerds could give you a better answer than I could, but
because that's what Hoyd is doing, really, right? He's going around and like collecting magic and
trying to get invested from all the different magic systems. Yeah, that's the implication of what he's doing for sure.
Because we see him use Elantris magic in Tress, right?
So yeah, so apparently that was a really tough one, but somehow, well, I think they hint that he struck a deal or something with an Elantrician, but yeah, that's apparently a really tough one to get access to, and he's managed it. So
wow,
he's Hoyd.
So yeah, it really is investiture dependent.
Interesting. Okay. Well, going along with the magic, my last question I have here so we have Painter, who paints things and turns these nightmares into something else. And then we have Yumi, who stacks rocks and it pleases the spirits, which grant boons. What, as far as like the magic system, like the overall like Cosmere magic system, what is happening here? Are the spirits like a type of spren? or like what exactly are they doing as far as like, what we know about how magic works in the Cosmere?
Honestly, like I said earlier, this is a tough one for me, especially not having read it in a little while. Um, I think of them closer to as like as cognitive shadows, when the shadows break out, or the figures whatever break out of the black abyss. Like it's been too long since I read the book for me to give you
Mm.
a particularly cogent answer. But it's because it's also like how are things floating over there? There's a bunch of questions I still have about how that works, and
Yeah.
it all relates back to the big magic machine that was causing all the like everyone
Yeah.
Yumi knew to be just I think just a cognitive shadow or some sort of
Yeah.
non actual living person. But yeah, no, it's a weird mysterious one to me.
That was interesting too, because they basically had like this rogue machine that was like just transforming everybody into, cognitive shadow or nightmares or whatever. um and even just outside of the, you know cool like magic system part of that, I thought it was interesting that this book was, I feel like it was saying something about AI art. Like, I don't know how everybody feels about AI art, but I really like kind of hate it. And it was interesting because Painter even says at one point, he's like a machine. He's like, there's a difference between us doing art and this machine doing art. Like, we are putting something more into it. Like, what we create will always be better because we are a living person that can kind of like, invest more into this art, whereas the machine is just like, it's just doing the same thing over and over and over. It just does what it, the quickest way to get the desired result is what it does. And I was like, oh yeah, that was surprisingly, surprisingly had a lot to say about AI art there.
Yeah, no, I like
So
that. I like how Brandon's exploring some of those ideas of like AI type stuff through just like a investiture just left on its own with an intent or something. Like Nightblood is another example of that, where it's just like it's a hunk of metal told to destroy evil. But
oh
like, okay,
yeah.
great. What's evil? And so I
Hmm.
think it's kind of another tact of kind of I think
Yeah.
saying something or provoking ideas along those lines for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of Nightblood when, but I mean it's got to be similar to what the machine is because it's just an invested
Hmm.
piece of thing, right? And that's
Yeah.
it. It makes it the same kind of thing.
I think Painter's work with the nightmares shares a lot of similarity with things we learn in the Stormlight Archive books.
Hmm.
That when he's, able to uh, invest meaning into these beings and it kind of locks them into now a form, a shape. That's exactly what we see when scientists are. I'm pretty sure this is what you've already read. They're, are sketching Spren,
The
and it
fire
locks
spread.
them
Yeah, I
in.
think that's Way of Kings, where there's like the two
Yeah.
husband and wife scientist couple, and
Right.
like
They can't
there's
change
like
now because they've been drawn, they've been seen that
yeah,
way.
Oh.
There's a similarity in the way the investiture is responding to the one who's observing it and then
Okay.
drawing it and creating something.
Man, that's crazy. I hadn't even thought hadn't even thought of that. So to yeah, that so something like that makes me wonder. I so does investiture like clearly that works similarly on both planets, right? So is that something that is kind of would be common across all the planets? Is that just a way that investiture works? Is by someone observing it and it changing?
I think it depends on the magic, because if you go to Scadrial,
Yeah.
like most of the magic is just invested metals,
Mm.
where the people are invested so they can burn the metals to have effects, and so I don't really see any of that on Scadrial. I could see that maybe more on the Warbreaker Ward Nalthus, maybe in
Mm.
terms of like the hair color, maybe something along those lines, but something I haven't really thought of, to be honest. But there's definitely, it was intentional. I agree with Jim. So
Mm.
it could be hinting at something for sure.
Okay, guys. Final thoughts. You got any final thoughts on the book?
Yeah, it's right in for me, honestly, the four first secret projects, putting Isles of the Emberbark aside, because I don't really even like that one being referred to as a secret project. But of the three major secret projects, I kind of like them all equally. Maybe Tress was a little bit below Yumi and Sunlit Man, and then whatever the goofy one was is just way below all of those. But
Hmm.
I thought it was solid. I liked it. I was thinking partway through, I was like, you know what? I'm not really liking this. I think this might be one of my weakest Brandon books. But by the end, he got me, and
Hmm.
I've since recommended it to a few people. So it's I liked it. I thought it was solid. I like that he's not just trying to kind of do the same. Like I like that he's pushing himself to try different things.
Yeah.
And so it's going to work better for some than others. But I think it was a solid book.
Where do all the secret projects fit into the same place roughly in your ranking of the Cosmere books?
Yeah, I would say so. Also, to this, I am liking the fact that Brandon is now like doing it's not a series, but like it's a loose. I think what's he calling it now? Like Hoyd's Travails is what he's calling
Mm.
it, and it's all the Cosmere stories narrated by Hoyd. And I'm happy that he's still, instead of writing, the going off and doing some of like the superhero series or the girl in
Hmm.
her starfighter series. Now when he wants a little break from the big giant epics, he's writing he's now focusing more on the Cosmere and writing some of these Hoyd's Travail stories. So and I think it's a good, and I like the fact that there's not really any order. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to think about too much about where this fits in. They're pretty standalone on their own, but there still are Easter eggs to the bigger story being told.
Jim, where does Yumi and the Nightmare Painter fit into your ranking? Does it
Well,
rank low in your
of the
favorite Cosmere books?
four secret novels, it's my least favorite.
Okay.
It's just it is because I found more to connect with and appreciate and enjoy in both Tress and the Sunlit Man.
Mm.
And then again, Frugal Wizard, which isn't Cosmere at all, was my favorite of the four secret novels. So we all bring our different preferences and tastes.
Yeah.
But all of these really are down at the bottom of my Cosmere overall appreciation. I mean, the stakes
Sure.
just aren't high enough in any of these books
Yeah,
to
Sure.
really weigh in with the other big books of the
Yeah.
Cosmere. They might be better than Wind and Truth. No, I can't even say that really. Wind and Truth, it just, again, it didn't deliver what I want.
Sure.
So there's some sour grapes involved. I feel like it needed editing. It was longer than it should have been. I could go on and on, but you haven't read it yet, so it's not relevant. Um, but I'm just really not a fan of that one. So I
Sure.
can't even rank that with these.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think like I said at the beginning, I mean, all three that I've read so far are all kind of like, man, like it's really hard to rank them for me. Like I've enjoyed Tress, Yumi, and the Wizard's Guide. Um, I really want to read Sunlit Man because I think it seems like most people enjoyed that one. But I know it's not really one of the secret projects, but it kind of is Isles of the Emberdark.
Mhm.
Um, and that one, if I was including it, would be at the very bottom, at least so far. But yeah, I've had a great time with all of these, and I wish I had read this book sooner because I think it would have been at least somewhere in my top 5 for the year because I had such a good time with it. And it certainly helps that Your Name was an inspiration because like I said, that's one of my favorite movies. One of the more just like really creative movies that I've seen. And so it was cool to see that he had inspiration from that. I'm not a huge like Final Fantasy fan, but apparently Final Fantasy X was also a big inspiration for this book, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, like Gavin said, it's cool to see him just trying something different. And I posted on Twitter the other day. I was like, I can't believe Sanderson wrote this. I'm like, it's so different to what he usually writes. It feels like, and so I had a great time. I had a great time with it. And it's made me want to go on to keep going with Stormlight. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thanks for joining me, guys, and hanging out and talking about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Go check out Jim's channel, Fantasy for the Ages. It'll be linked down in the description. And go check out our Patreon, where you can watch these episodes live as we record them. We got Twitter over there, we got Discord link down there, and then SpeakPipe if you want to leave us a voice message, and we will respond to it on the show. But yeah, upcoming we'll have our, maybe the Dresden Files episode will actually come out before this one. I'm not sure, but because we'll want to put that out pretty immediately after we read it. But yeah, we'll see you with more content soon, and we will be back doing some more Cosmere stuff. So we will see you next time back in the Cosmere. Bye, everybody.